All right, we are officially started with the Coaches Kickstart Club call. It must be the third Wednesday of a month because that's when we usually do this kind of thing. I'm Jenn Barley and Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Sullivan. That's funny that it must be the third whatever of the month, because don't we normally do these on Wednesday? Is this Wednesday?
It is Wednesday.
Oh man, I didn't even know.
Say Wednesday?
Yeah, I don't even know what day it is.
Yeah, I know. It feels like a Thursday to me. And then I go, whenever I say that, like it feels like a Thursday or it feels like this, like what does that day feel like? That's the key question. We never have a good answer for that, but it is a Wednesday and it is April 17th of 2019. And this is the Coaches Kickstart Club call. So Karen and I have been doing, well, I've been doing them for a super duper long time, and Karen's been doing them since I've known Karen with me. And we love to do the Coaches Kickstart Club call because it's a place where we can geek out about all things coaching. So sometimes it's about skill development, sometimes it's about ICF Core Competencies, occasionally about business, but it's sort of, you never know what you're going to get. Today, though, we're going to talk about, thanks to Susie, about direct communication. So actually, this all started for us in our recent conversations when I overheard Karen coaching. And Karen has a beautiful way of direct communication. It often involves cursing or, cursing. And but it's just a very matter-of-fact way to do it. And so we put a post in our Facebook group about this funny thing where she said, you know, quite frankly, with that mindset, you're effed. And so then we all were laughing about it and people loved the post. But then we started getting some good questions. And Susie was a driver of that, saying, what really, though, is direct communication, and how do we find that balance, and what does it really mean, and where can it cross a line between telling versus being direct, right? So that's what Karen and I like to talk about, is what's the difference between direct and directive? Because directive communication is, you should do this, call your brother, let me tell you what to do. So there is a fine line, and we don't want to go there. So Karen and I thought what we do is actually bring up some of the ICF Core Competency. So Karen and I have done an on-demand class. We studied all the core competencies, and we're going to pull out a snippet of the direct communication section of that class and just talk about it and share it and go from there. So anything else you want to add there, Kara?
No.
No. The woman of very few words.
That was direct
communication.
No.
All right. So let's first open it up for a discussion here. And the discussion point is, in general, no matter what your definition of direct communication is, what do you think prevents direct communication? What do you think prevents it? You can just unmute yourself, share your thoughts, and let's hear from a few of you on what that might be.
Can I go?
Yeah, go ahead, Rena. You are good to go.
I don't know why I can't, my camera's not working. That's a quandary. That was direct communication. Anyway, so what I feel one of the differences is that sometimes when we approach direct communication, what can impact it are our own projections in terms of, what gets in our own way, so that can inhibit directly communicating and can sidetrack it a little bit with another filter for me.
Love it. So true, right? So MSU, we make stuff up about, there could be a couple different ways of hearing projections, but one could be, oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings, or I don't want to make them feel bad, or, oh, wow, it would be difficult if I heard this, therefore I can't say it. Things like that, Rena?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. Good. Who else? What do you think prevents direct communication?
Can I go? Oh.
Yep, go ahead. Go ahead, Joanne.
Okay, I'll go. I think it's my judgment. Sometimes I revisit my judgment, and I'm asking the question, am I judging here, or, so it prevents me from being free at talking.
I love it. It's the fear of crossing that line we talked about, right? It's that little bit of like, am I judging? Am I not? Maybe I better not say anything. Am I really coaching? And we start to second guess, even though deep down we know they need to hear it or we need to figure out a way to say it. That's really good, because what I do gather from many coaches is that we don't want judgment to come into a situation. And the fact and the truth is, we all have judgment. I don't care who you are, right? Some people are like, oh, I'm so zen, I never judge anything. Bullshit, right? It happens. We do it and we may catch ourselves and we may not share it, but I totally get that. Good. All right, Susie, what were you going to say?
You want to unmute her, Jen?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Basically the same thing is that I think it's the one competency where I really get in my own way and I cross over from being Susie the coach to Susie, right? And I don't want to hurt their feelings. I don't want to judge. I try to listen to my belly, because when it's going on, a lot of times my belly's jumping up and down. It's like, so I'm noticing there's something going on, but then I kind of get twisted in knots, what to say, how to say it, and I'm not very effective.
Okay, good. We're going to help with that. All right. So, Kara, what are some other reasons that sometimes we shy away from direct communication?
So I think some of the things here is, if you think about it, what might prevent it would be that you take it personally when the client doesn't technically agree with what your observation might be. And then, of course, like Susie just said, then all the voices in your head start like, oh my gosh, shouldn't have said that. Oh my gosh, I screwed it up. Oh my gosh, whatever. So you take it really personally. A lot of times what Jen and I see, especially with people that are a little bit more on the newer side, their real concern is that the client isn't going to want to work with them anymore. It's just like, oh man, if I say this, they're going to fire me. So you get way, way attached to the outcomes right there. One of the interesting pieces is sometimes you think that and this, hang with me here. You think that you know how the client feels and how they're going to interpret the information that you give them. So when you say something to them, like you make up what you think they're making up, and we just make things up. So that's a whole big MSU thing happening right there. And again, I think some of the things you said, thinking that the client can't handle it, not really, you're thinking that like, oh my gosh, if I say that, I'm not going to sound nice. My clients don't pay me for nice. They pay me for results. They pay me for getting them out of their own way. And nice doesn't necessarily always fit into that category. One of the biggest pieces I think here, Jen, that prevents it also is that people go into fix-it mode and they try to understand and they try to fix the problem and they get stuck in the problem instead of focusing on the client. So it's I need to understand this whole problem. And the interesting part about it is that you need to understand your client. Understanding your client is going to help you with direct communication because the problem doesn't really matter.
I love it, Kara. I always like to say it's our job to understand who is our client in relationship to their problem, right? And so I think that's good. That's good.
And you know what's funny, Jen, with that, I mean, how many times have, the both of us gotten off coaching calls and, you'll say to me, well, what was the problem? I'm like, I don't know. Like the problem doesn't matter. Like, I don't care. I don't mean like in a negative way. I don't care about the problem, but the problem doesn't matter. Like, I don't need to know all the stuff that goes with it. I just need to know what's the effect of the stuff and what effect is the stuff having on my client.
Good. All right, so let's dive into this core competency, and I have some slides to help us with the heaviness of words that come with this. So let me just go from current slide. All right, so at the very top level, so this is the ICF Core Competencies, and it is competency number 7 of direct communication. And the interesting thing is that the deeper you dig into this competency, the better we can understand it. If we just stay at the top level of 2 words, competency number 7, direct communication, that's super vague. To be honest, their description for the competency is pretty vague too. Then we'll have sub-bullets of what it means. And then Karen and I pulled out the PCC markers that indicate if people are at that intermediate level of coaching. So that way we can discuss this a little bit more. So this top level is the ability to communicate effectively during coaching sessions and to use language that has the greatest positive impact on the client. And this is pretty vague, right? So what is positive impact really mean? What is effectively, right? How do we know if the language is landing in the right place? One of the things that Karen and I like to say from this very, very top level perspective is that direct communication, some of the spirit of it is actually in being succinct, I can't say it, straightforward, with the fewest amount of words. What happens is that a lot of times people, through acknowledging or reflecting or validating and their questions and their explanation of the question and their making sure clients get things, will really lose a lot in the translation through all of those words that are spoken. So part of being direct is being able to, what Karen and I like to call, take the Barney Rubble approach to coaching. And if you guys remember Barney Rubble from the Flintstone, he was short and broad, right? So when we say the Barney Rubble approach, it's how do you shorten your questions, your observations, and how do you make it broad so that the client then can take that moment to go in whatever direction they want it. Okay. Anything to add there, or should we go to the sub-bullets, Kara?
So what just the thing here is, and it's funny, Jen, because this is about the direct communication, and it sounds so silly, but it's just so simple. It's like that Barney Rubble thing that you said, right? Short and broad. How do we use the least amount of words possible to just get the point across? And sometimes what tends to happen is the sugarcoating clouds the direct communication.
Totally true. That was very short and broad of you, Karen. I was expecting one more sentence.
No.
Okay. All right. So when we look under the sub-bullets, here's 2 of a few. It says the sub-bullets is clear, articulate, and direct in sharing and providing feedback. Okay. So there is a difference between feedback and an opinion. And that's where I think people get tripped up. So feedback, it's not our opinion, or it's not even our thought on how we would approach it or what it is that the person should learn. Feedback is an observation. Being very direct with being able to say, I am feeding back to you, the client, what I hear you are saying. So examples might be things like, I have to say that you have now used the word stressed 5 times. Or saying, it seems like you're avoiding the situation. Or I'm noticing there's a pattern that you brought up several times. That's the feedback. So Karen and I love to say you can't see the spinach in your own teeth. So part of direct communication is the verbal mirror of what is happening, right? So it's not about if it's good or bad. It's not about if they should be doing something different, but it's about bringing that awareness, the feedback. This is how you are showing up in the world. This is what I'm hearing. These are the patterns. These are the words that you're using, so that you can hear it back in order to figure out what you want to do with it.
And it's funny, Jen, we were just talking about the spinach in your own teeth. You can't see the spinach in your own teeth, but as a coach, You get paid to point out the spinach, right, to your clients, because you want to make sure that they're not walking around with spinach in their own teeth, right? So we as coaches, it's just like, hey, direct communication is, you got spinach in your teeth. Like, let's do something. Let's make sure that you're telling them that it's there, and then whatever happens, they get to do something about that.
You know, that's good. Even sort of thinking through this. So let's say you have a client that basically says they're going to do something, and then they don't do something. And then they keep showing up and they're not doing their action items, right? Non-direct communication is things like, oh, that's okay, I'm sure you were busy. Don't worry about it, just get it back to me next week. Or, you know, well, I understand, and, you know, just try harder. Direct communication is by saying something like, so I need to just, you know, share with you, this is the third week in a row where you left fired up and you came back doing nothing. What's up with that? So those kinds of things. So it's not a judgment to say this is right or wrong, or this is what you should do or you shouldn't do. But what it is about saying, I'm going to call you on your actions so you can decide if you want to keep doing those same actions or you want to do something different.
And you know what, Jen, I think that this is one of the big things too, that a lot of coaches don't want to do because of all the fear that pops up from what we talked about in the beginning, right? They think they're going to hurt somebody's feelings, or they think that they're not going to get, you know, that their client is going to quit and they're out and you're not going to get paid or whatever. I think that you're doing your clients a disservice if you don't directly communicate. I had this woman that I was working with years ago, and I just basically had called BS on some of the stuff that she said she was doing or actually was not doing. And, you know, I said to her, you know, you keep saying that you're going to do this and you never do it. And I think that this is something that's going to be really important that we talk about. And she's like, yeah, sure. You know, we'll talk about it. You're right. And we'll talk about it next week. And the interesting thing was she canceled the next 3 sessions. And that she just wasn't ready to talk about it. So finally the 4th session she came to, and I'm like, what the hell happened? Like, where'd you go? And she finally came up with I was afraid to talk about it. And after she talked about it, it wasn't as bad as she thought it was going to be talking about it. But she said that, you know, I mean, I could be direct. I know that you're shocked. And she's like, I was scared that you were going to really bust me about this. And it's interesting because in those kind of situations, I mean, I will directly communicate, but then, like, once I throw it out there, I am insanely supportive. And I know that some of you might find this shocking, but I'm really caring.
You are.
And so I'm not going to be like, okay, great. Well, you know, suck it up, buttercup now. And, you know, those kind of things. Once somebody's when somebody's vulnerable, you know, that's not the ass kicking part of me. That's the hand holding part of me. So by helping her understand also that, you know, that the support was there is huge. But she was just kind of scared because she thought that I was going to bust on her. And of course she didn't do anything else either during the time when she was gone.
Good. All right. Any questions about that first bullet point? Clear and articulate in direction, sharing and providing feedback. Okay. The second bullet is reframes and articulates to help the client understand from another perspective what she wants or is uncertain about. So this one here is helping, again, it's sort of around the same thing, getting the personal awareness, the aha, and reflecting back. So there's a few things about being able to do this. So one is using the skill of reframing. And the reframing is being able to pull out another perspective than what's being understood. So, what's been your biggest lesson from this experience? What skills were you able to practice in this particular situation? Those types of things, which are great, so that it gets the client to understand a different perspective of what's happening, as opposed to me saying something like, well, the way I look at this is that for me, anytime I go through something, I always learn something from it, and I'm a better person in the long run. It's not about doing that. It's about saying, what are you learning from this? And it's about, even though you're disappointed in the results, what are 3 takeaways that you can take from this situation? So still being able to be with the client there, but helping them get clarity around the 360-degree perspective of it.
And Jen, I think that biggest point of what you said, right, though, it's not your perspective, right? It's helping them find their perspective that has them stuck. Because when they find the perspective, it's so much more impactful, and it's more of a, for some people it's a huge aha that they can actually find that new perspective.
Love it. The next sub-bullet point is clearly states coaching objectives, meeting agenda, purpose of techniques or exercise. So the way to sort of think about this is that it is being able to directly state back. So if I hear you clearly, you want to focus on A, B, and C. At the end of today's session, it's going to be a home run if you accomplish X, Y, and Z. Being able to directly share back so that there is clarity around what is happening in the session, so the client can actually go, it's not that, or it's something else, or yes, and those kinds of things. The other thing is sometimes we have techniques that we use. It could be a tool, it could be a meditation, and being direct about what is the intention for an introduced tool and being direct about what's about to happen. So an example would be something like, let's say you're going to do a closed eye exercise, right? So instead of just saying, okay, close your eyes, and then they're like, wait, what's going on? And why is my eyes closed? And what's happening? To say, here's a technique I like to try. Let me explain how it will happen, and then let's talk about if it feels like it's right for you. So I'm going to have you close your eyes. I'm going to have you take 3 deep breaths. I'm going to take you through a visualization, and then I'm going to ask you a few questions. Are you game? So that way the person knows exactly what's going to happen, and they can decide whether or not it's for them. And the intention would be to, think of possibilities, or the intention is to just ground ourselves to this moment. It doesn't matter. But helping people understand, so being direct with, we don't need to do that around skills. This is more about techniques or tools. So I don't have to sit there and say, well, I'm about to reflect back to you what I heard you saying so that I'm listening. Like, you don't have to do that, obviously. But when you're taking somebody out of the standard coaching conversation. Okay. Next one. This one's pretty straightforward in theory. So this is about uses language appropriate and respectful to the client. Obviously, non-sexist, non-racist, non-technical, non-jargon. I say in theory. Coaches live in such a world that we're often surrounded by other coaches. So what is normal language for us is not normal for the person on the street, right? So that's something, Karen and I even have some funny jargony terms that we use with each other to kind of, to have fun with it, to be honest. Because, if I was to go up to somebody I meet at a coffee shop and say, hey, can I have a conversation with you? And I want you to know that we're in a safe container of space right now. They're going to probably walk away or not know what I'm talking about or think I'm a little bit out there. So coaches may talk that way to each other, but really realize that coaching jargon, people won't know exactly what it is. What, Kara?
I was just thinking of that funny video that we did.
Oh, in the car?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were having fun. We were driving somewhere one day and we were doing a whole bunch of videos in the car, just kind of for us. And we did one all around where we had a whole conversation only using coach jargon. It was fantastic.
Oh, it's hilarious.
I
Do you
should
still
find
have
it.
that?
Yeah, I have it. We'll see. I may have to review it if I think about posting it.
Okay.
So even some types of questions can be very jargony. Who are you becoming? That would be a jargony question, right? Who would you be without that thought? That can be a little bit on the jargony side as well. So I know many of the people on these calls are certified in different assessments that have different language that is only appropriate to that assessment. That can get jargony as well. In fact, we notice it sometimes on our Facebook page when people won't, and I try my best to get people to talk about things in normal language. An example would be if you happen to know energy levels, you may comment on our post and say, well, I would coach level 1. Well, half of the community has no idea what level 1 is. So then I'll go in, can you please explain what level 1 is? Or so really trying to get out of using codes in our everyday conversations will help us with this a lot.
That happened too, Jen, with some other people talking about some like captain exercises or something. People
Captain and a crew. That's a CTI exercise, right?
Yeah.
Very powerful tool. Great. People love it from CTI, but a lot of people don't know what a captain is or a crew. So I think that's a really good example. We have so many different people in our Facebook group from all different walks. And so it's a great practice if you default to jargon when you speak or when you think or when you interact, is to be able to spell those out in everyday language, even in the group. All right. The next one uses metaphor and analogy to help to illustrate a point or paint a verbal picture. So this is pretty interesting in terms of direct communication. The power of the metaphor is that when you replay it back to them, the client may understand their situation better. So I'm going to give an example. Client tells a story, blah, 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 and then you say as a coach, so it really sounds like that you feel you're in the middle of an ocean and there's no land in sight. So I don't know, and that just explained what they said. The nice thing about that form of direct communication is it allows the person to hear how it's appearing to somebody else, that they go, yes, that's it. I don't even know what direction is land. So there's a lot of great ways to go with it. Metaphor, though, if you can do it well to summarize what you hear, can really land well with the client. And then obviously, using metaphor as a coaching technique, when the client uses a metaphor, asking metaphor type questions, So you said that you feel like you're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back one step forward, 2 steps back as you're climbing this mountain. What if you took a side step? What would be different? Or, what feels most slippery? Or when are you sure-footed? Like, I'm just trying to think of different things. But that kind of directly relating to their metaphor can help the client as well. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to show are the PCC markers. There are 3 different levels of the ICF accreditations. There's ACC, PCC, and MCC. ACC is between 100 and I think 450 hours of coaching. And then the PCC level is about 450-ish, maybe it's 5, I can't remember off the top of my head, up to 2,500 hours of coaching. And MCC is over 2,500 hours. So one of the things that Karen and I have done, and I've been the active participant in it since we are an ICF accredited coach training program for our Get Real Leadership and Corporate Coach Training, is I have gone through the PCC marker assessment training with the ICF. So these are what people are listening for to make sure that you're at that intermediate level of coaching. So the first one here is coach shares observations, intuitions, comments, thoughts, and feelings whoops, I have too many things in front of me, to serve the client's learning or forward movement. There it is. So this again is where we have to be, this is where, Susie, it is the directive versus direct communication. So this is where we reflect back what it is that we're hearing. And the purpose and the intent is for the client to understand it. And so this is where when we use direct communication, we need to use words like it seems, it appears, perhaps, what I'm hearing. Karen does this in a wonderful way. She'll always say, I could be totally off base here right now, but what it seems to me is. And that's always I'm going to share what I'm hearing, not what you should do, but I'm going to be reflecting back to you what's going on with that. The thing is after you make this statement, it's super important to have an empowering question follow it. It seems to me that you are really avoiding dealing with this. When I say that, what comes up for you? Or saying, how does that come across? Or what comes to your mind when you hear what I just said? Or how true is that? So when we make that sentence, if we just do a sentence without an empowering question, we're just more giving them information or telling them. We have to invite them into our observation to see where it lands with them. Sorry, Kara, I just invited you somewhere.
I know. Did you see me roll my eyes?
I did. That's why I said apologize.
Yeah.
Anything you would add there, Kara?
Well, I think that the big part of this is that it's I really feel like it's making the comment, right? Like you said, it looks like, it sounds like, it seems like, perhaps, whatever. And I think that the power after that is really the power comes from the real powerful question after that. And that's another, it's almost like the other side of direct communication when you're doing that. So it's being it seems like, it sounds like, it, whatever it looks like. And then with the powerful question, finding out how that actually landed. So when I say that, like, what are you thinking? You know, when you just heard that, what are 3 feelings that just popped up? So those kind of things to get that in the moment feedback from the client, I think is really important.
Good. What questions or thoughts do you guys have about this one? Because I think this is the one that can trip people up the most.
Can I talk?
Yeah.
So this is perfect. I have a client who was in a situation, and every week she would say she was going to do X, right? X task, which was really hard for her. And every week she would come back and she didn't do it. And I let it go a couple of weeks because I was really kind of scratching my head because it would sound like she was going to go do it. I believed she was going to go do it. And I also believed from her it was critically important to get her where she wanted to go. And then this was one of the things I had such a hard time with. I just had to say basically what I just said to you guys. Each week we talk about you going to do your client list, and each week you come back and you haven't done it. What's up with that? So can you tell me what you think of that as direct communication?
It's perfect, right? So, and especially with the what's up with that. That is inviting them into the conversation. It's an observation that you had. Now, there's a couple of things you could also do. You could say, so, you know, each week you say you're going to do it, and each week, as of yet, you haven't. So how do you feel about getting to the bottom of this?
Okay.
Is another thing to say, right? And then they can say yes or they could say no. Another thing I like to do is to say, you know what? I have to just point out, this is the 3rd time you've come back empty-handed. Let me ask a question. When we hang up the phone, you are fired up, committed, ready to go around getting this client list. When does that change? So what you want to do is still coach. There's resistance. They get stressed. They get overwhelmed. They don't know how to do it. They're dog threw up on the carpet. We have no idea. But I always like to say, what day of the week did you lose momentum? And they're going to tell you, oh, Thursday. Great. Tell me what happened Thursday, or take me through your internal conversation when you chose not to do it. So it's about saying, hey, you're not doing what you say you're going to do. Now let's figure it out together. So Susie, I think you handled it well. And then those are some additional questions to be able to find out, because I don't necessarily love it when people don't do what they're going to say, but there's so much information and how they do anything is how they do everything. And figuring out what changes from yes to I didn't do it.
Perfect. Thank you.
You bet.
One of the other things too, Susie, is I love that question, right? Just what's up with that? And then when, excuse me, somebody answers that, I like to throw in another insanely great question that's only 3 words. And what else? Right? So it's if you can think, you know, one of the big things that Jen and I are really, really big proponents of is getting one of your coaching sessions transcribed. And when you get the transcription of that, take a look at how much you talk. Take a look at how insanely long your questions are. And then what I want you to do is I want you to shorten them. I mean, I think some of the biggest, most impactful questions are, you know, 5 words or less. It's funny, Jen and I, we had this, I don't know, it was months ago. And we had, I'm not 100% sure of the circumstances. And I think, Jen, you said, what's a coaching question that people would ask me because I wasn't going running, or I was procrastinating on running or something like that. And then I was going to pick my favorite question. And then I did a coaching session with the person who asked me the favorite question. And the favorite question of that was WTF. And it was just so simple. And it was just like, yeah, that's it. And that one is 3 letters, right? But really 3 words. That was the question. And it's just like, yeah, seriously? But, you know, it's those things. It's just the, you know, and what else? You know, what's up with that? You know, WTF, whatever it is, but taking your questions and shortening them are so important, and only asking one question at a time. Because people get too, because what happens is you say a question and then you're like, ooh, I probably could have said that better. So let me say it in another word. And then, I probably could have said it a little bit better than that. And let me say it again. And by the time you finish, the client doesn't even know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's fun. Kara, I remember that. That actually was from a while ago. And I'll activate that thread again in the Facebook group. It was because you didn't want to run. And I did. And I'm like, can I get some help? Give Karen a coaching question to motivate her. And then I took a picture of her running and all that. So I'll post it. Good. Okay, let's keep cranking through here. At the PCC level, it's the coach shares observations, intuition, comments, thoughts, and feelings without any attachment to them being right. So this is about being a direct communicator, sharing an observation, and being 100% being okay if you're wrong. So let's say you share something and the client says, no, that's not it at all. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to apologize for it. You don't have to stay on it, and you don't have to say, no, I know they're denying the truth. It's about just moving on from what it is that's going on and really realizing that we don't necessarily have it figured out. Sometimes it might be the intuition, or we have read a situation completely wrong, right? If you get frustrated with your client for their response to your direct communication, you are attached, right? And so, in fact, this happens with one of our friends, not Joanne, who's on the call, but a different friend, where sometimes I'll ask her these, I'm like, I got it all figured out. Here's what's going on. I'm going to ask them the best question ever, and they're going to get it too, because it's friends. It's not coaching, right? So they're going to understand it too, and then I'll get back an answer. I'm like, they don't even get the question. And then I get so frustrated, right? But that's because I'm attached to helping them get the aha that I know that they could have if they would just answer the question the way I think they should. Right, Karen?
Oh my gosh, totally.
Okay, good. All right. So just in the concept of time here, we're going to keep moving on. So this is where the coach uses the client's language or language that reflects the client's way of speaking. So direct communication is using your client's words, your client's phrases, the things that are important to them, and not changing it because we prefer a different word or we aren't comfortable even with a word sometimes. The also, to be PCC at that level, it's about the coach's language being generally clear and concise. We've talked about this a lot, and this is when this is where short and broad really comes into play. It's not getting lost in a whole bunch of words and not over explaining what the questions are. I always like, sometimes I will ask a question and I don't even know what the question means. Like it comes out of my mouth and I'm like, ooh, this will be interesting. Can't wait to see how they answer this. But I refuse to say what I really meant was or try to explain it. I just give it to them and who knows if it will land. Carrie, you mentioned this, right? The coach allows the client to do most of the talking. So if you get those transcripts, you can see what's happening, but usually like about a 80-20 rule, right?
Yeah, 80-20, 70-30. But yeah, totally, it shouldn't be you on the heavier side of that. I have this conference call line, and it's called Uber Conference. And you can get a free service or you can get the paid version. And I think even with the free service is after you get it, after you hang up the call, they send you what they call the summary of the call. And what it shows is how much each person from each phone number talked. So it gives you the exact minutes, how much you talked and how much the other person talked. And it's a great way to see how much you are talking and how much you're just listening.
All right. And then the coach allows the client to complete speaking without interrupting unless there's a stated coaching purpose to do so. So, being able to cut in if the client is rambling or off track, or you need to find out what does this have to do with our coaching agreement that we've already established, or they're going on and on or repeating themselves. Those kinds of things are necessary to bring the client into focus, but really allowing that extra airtime around them answering your question is at the PCC level.
And I think, Jen, the biggest part about this one too is that there's a huge difference between interrupting your client and intruding. And as a coach, when they start going in 4,000 different directions, and they tell you about the news, the sports, the weather, the whole kind of thing, and you just let them ramble, that's you're not doing them a service. There's a difference between venting, there's a difference between rambling, and you want to make sure that as a coach you're letting people vent and not ramble. So when you intrude, it's your job. When you interrupt somebody, not really what you're supposed to be doing. And that's what that ICF Core Competency talks about, to let them actually complete speaking without interrupting them. But my thing, intrude if you keep hearing the same story twice, or they start to just, tell you random stuff that makes no difference.
Or give you tons of evidence, right? So then part of it is say, I get it. I totally understand. You give me a couple good pieces of data that support why you feel the way that you do. It totally makes sense based on, what's happened. So, and then moving from there. So the last.
You know what was the biggest aha for me? And because it's hard when someone gives you a specific thing, right? And you get attached to it. So you ask questions about it. But this weekend in the Get Real corporate training, when we walk through, this is what I want, but here's really the goal. What is this going to get us? So it was like a brain exercise. It was like a muscle I hadn't really used. So instead of, for me, I sometimes get a little stuck in direct focusing on that. And it will limit you in the thing behind the thing sometimes. I don't know. I mean, whatever. But this helped me drive a different place because it was a different way to get there. So even if I don't use that process with clients, using it just with myself mentally as we walk through it was really beneficial for kind of a different attack route, right?
Love it.
So much better though, because like I said, it stretched me to a different way to think at the brain that I was a little more challenged at how to move around it. And I totally found a different path now.
Good.
I think that's great too, Kath, because that allows you to see the different perspective, right? So we're going this way, we're going this way, we're going this way. We drive to work this way all the time, the same way. And all of a sudden one day a detour pops up and you're like, oh crap, I got to go this way now. And you find out this way is actually the better way. So it's being open to the pivots and the detours, and that some things might be a different way.
And I think as a coach though, we have to be able to pivot and detour.
Yep, absolutely.
And you get, like I said, that was a big aha for me, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I worked a lot harder to get to that path when it was a little more direct with this process, right?
Yep.
Hopefully once I do it, it'll become a little more natural and the question processing, but I laid that in front of me, yesterday, and I thought I'll just look down and kind of think it through my own head so that I can fire back and go a different way. I don't know, I thought it was really good, but again, stretching your brain, because we get so, like you said, if you drive to work the same way every day, you're stuck there. And how can I easily shift? And that for me was a very, I'm going to build my muscles by doing this exercise. So
cool. Love it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so real quickly, I just want to say one thing, Kara. I got to talk 1 second about direct versus directive for 1/2 second, and then I know we're going to wrap it up. I see that look. We'll be fine. So I'm going to tell you ways that we can be directive as coaches. One of them is when you ask leading questions. A leading question is, I'm going to ask you a question that really gives you the answer so that you'll see it in where I want you to go, but it's not really a question. It's really a suggestion that is preceded with what if. Like, what if you were to call your brother up? Or what if you were to change your perspective? Or what if you wrote down everything you were feeling all day long? I'm just making stuff up. But a lot of times those leading questions are really going to be, this is what I think you should do. So I'm now being directive and disguising it as a question. Giving advice is directive. Here's what you should do. And my number one recommendation is that you actually pick up the phone and you call them and you sit down and go meet at Starbucks, right? Very directive on what it is. Telling your client what something means, right? So connecting the dots for the clients. So an example would be, so the last 3 times you brought up the word stressed, and what that means is, as opposed to the last 3 times you brought up the word stress, what does that tell you, right? So instead of me saying, I can give you all the insights in the world, having them be able to attach meaning. Instead of saying, wow, you're angry, it seems like there's a lot of anger. What's really going on? So it's about how you approach it, and that directive is going to be more about what you think is best. And if you give your clients homework and you tell them the assignment they should do, that is technically directive, right? As opposed to, so it seems like there needs to be some connection throughout the next week over this. What ideas do you have? How do you want to stay connected? What's coming up for you? As opposed to, you should really read this book, right? So the client may say something like, well, I'd really like to read up more about this. Do you have any articles that might be helpful? That's different. Sure, I do, right? As opposed to, here's 3 articles you should read.
Are you saying no homework? Are you saying not to be directive around it?
To be ICF compatible at the PCC level, yes. I also think that we blend a lot of our coaching skills together, and it just depends. But if somebody tells me to go read a book, I probably won't. Okay. You know what I mean? Like if somebody said, like it depends. If somebody was to say, I'm trying to think of something I would never do. A lot of it has to be around their learning style. what's the best way for them to do that? What's a good way? Or if you are directive and saying, go do this, what comes up for you when I say that? What part do you think will be resisted? What part of it feels easy? What might be a different way to accomplish the same thing? So you still get their buy-in to the overall part of it.
So could you say, how about, journaling 3 to 5 positive attitude of gratitude things every evening?
I would actually say, so if you were to, at the end of the day, to reflect on 3 gratitude things, how would you like to do that?
Okay.
Yeah, because I would never write them down. But I tell them to Karen almost every night.
Which
right?
that counts.
Yeah. So anyway, but so how could you get that vibe? How can you stay connected to what you're grateful for? Helping them to do that. Okay. So Kara, I promised we wouldn't take too long, right? So I did want to say the following, and that is that we took a portion of today's stuff from our on-demand ICF Core Competency class. This here is the website if you're interested in that class. It's just on demand. It was recorded a while ago, but it goes through each and every one of the ICF Core Competencies at a deeper level. And you can check it out by going to kickstartyouredge.com/cc if that's something that's interesting to you. But Karen and I love talking about the ICF Core Competencies because they are an ongoing, ever-evolving kind of thing, where when I started in coaching, there were no PCC markers. So the study and the research and the looking at best practices have really helped to refine them, and they can still be confusing a lot of the time.
It's what I did, and then took the test and passed ICF right after. So,
and we have 100% kick-ass passing rate on that coach knowledge assessment for people that took that class.
So it's good. So Susie, was this helpful? Good. Okay, good. Well, I appreciate, so this all came up because of the question that Susie asked, said, can we talk about this more? So as you guys think about what's important to you and your learning, definitely let us know what it is. We love to have discussions around all things coaching, and if we can even turn it into a multiple part series, that's even more fun for us. So keep the ideas coming, and we definitely appreciate it. So
let's do one on metaphors.
Oh yeah, metaphors are fun.
The ICF tried to do one and it bombed.
Oh my gosh, we have a great metaphor class.
That would be awesome.
It's good. Okay, on that note, I think, Kara, we're done.
I'm done. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Bye.